Hi everyone. Um, Now we're up to what happened to me when I got government housing Part 77, and I have tons of things to say, believe it or not, on other topics. And the other thing I wanted to say is that we're nearly finished this one. So in this video, we're taking another turn. I know that, when I started my story, it was talking about me in government housing, and then I started telling you about violence that I had suffered, and I did, and as you can see, I suffered violence from many people, not just the respondent, but obviously it was more so from him. So, but in this video, we're going to take another turn of events, which will hopefully be a relief for those of you that support me. And I'll get stuck into it now. So on the 24th of the 9th, 2017, I went outside to see what rubbish had been thrown into my side yard, because on the previous night, the respondent was actually going mental. He was doing all these things, including the usual banging on my ceiling, but he also bashed on my front door and threw something against my side gate, or bashed on that. And as usual, I didn't know what sparked this off. It was just another one of these tantrums, but this one was particularly bad. And he would normally bang on my ceiling, which was very hard to deal with, but he was banging on my front door and my side gate. And so it was much worse than what it usually was. Looking back at it now, he may have been trying to get me to go outside. But I mean, obviously, I wasn't going to ask. I didn't ask him, and I really hope no one ever expects me to ask him. But yeah, I have no idea what sparked it off. Then on the 29th of the 9th, 2017, I printed out some documents that I could make, so I could make an application to VCAT to have the rubbish in my side yard removed. I still hadn't heard from the Department of Housing regarding the breach notice that I had sent them a while back, so it looked like I would have to attend another 2 VCAT hearings on top of the court hearing for compensation that I had coming up. So, it was like not like a part-time job, not like a full-time job, but sort of somewhere in between. It was very laborious. All the work that I had to do, all the legwork, the administrative work, it was just horrible. I was scared of dealing with the Department of Housing, and I was scared of retaliation from the housing officers. But the rubbish in my side yard was so disgusting and so impactful on my lifestyle that I forced myself to get them to remove it. I don't really know what I thought would happen, but I was hoping for compensation for what I had to go through having all that rubbish there. And obviously I wanted to get a VCAT order to have the rubbish removed. Apart from stalking me at home, like when I was in my backyard or trying to get in and out of my unit, the respondent would also confront me when he saw me walking down the street, and he would sometimes drive his car alongside me, which was really scary at the time because he had been so violent towards me. But now that I'm looking back at it, it was particularly weird. Every time I think about these sorts of incidents, it disturbs me because I never knew what connection the respondent thought he had with me, and also because I've consistently had this sort of problem with other people before. I've always had a problem with people who don't know me, who feel like they are attached to me in some way. And I think a large part of that is because the fact is that some people think that they are getting to know you when they bug your phone or violate your privacy in some other way. And I've talked about that topic briefly in the video that I did about surveillance, and I think that I'll keep talking about that because I've had such an issue with that sort of behaviour. That's generally. But anyway, regarding this, this topic and this man, he kept stalking me and following me, and his fixation couldn't be explained. Like, I was literally dumbfounded by why he was targeting me. And he seemed to think that confronting me and presenting himself to me was a form of communication in itself. But I never knew what he thought he was trying to say to me, or how he thought I was supposed to be responding to that behavior. And now that I look back at it, I have to assume that someone was talking shit about me to him, and that's where his anger and motivation was coming from. On the 3rd of the 10th, 2017, I posted an application to VCAT for a hearing about the rubbish in my side yard. And that's interesting because I decided to do that, like a week or so back, and I did it on the 3rd. So I think the reality of my situation was that because of the expense of a basic application to VCAT, that's what was causing the delay, between the decision and me actually doing it. Like, as a pensioner and as someone on welfare, even basic applications are really expensive because you have to, like, not just print out copies, but print out several copies, one for yourself, one for VCAT, and one for the other side, and you have to print out the evidence. And when they are sent, like, by registered mail, it's really expensive. So all the banging that the respondent was doing was now getting really bad. And it wasn't just on my ceiling, but it seemed to be on my front door and my side gate regularly. So by the 12th of the 10th, 2017, it became normal for me to collect my daughter from school, then just go straight to the park or somewhere else instead of going home. I was staying away from my home as much as I could. And I had to stay away at the normal times, like after school, because the respondent knew that I was normally, around the car park or in the street at that time. And he would hang around in those areas waiting for me so he could verbally abuse me, or confront me or block my path. Sometimes I would just go to parks, and sometimes I would go to the laundrette and just sit there and wait for time to pass, hoping that he wouldn't be in the car park waiting for me when I got home. There were other times when I would just pick up my daughter and get on a train and go to the city and sit in McDonald's until the sun went down, and then I'd go home. But I couldn't do that often because I couldn't afford it. And there were a few times when I got caught out in the city with no money. I would normally check my bank account several times a day if I had to, just to make sure I had enough money just to do something basic like, touch on my MyKey card at the train station. But somehow I did end up in the city with no money, and I don't remember how that happened or even how I got home. On the 13th of the 10th, 2017, I received an email from VCAT saying that there was a problem with my fee waiver application and that I would have to send it in again. So that was going to cost me more money and more time and more effort. And I was hoping that all of that would be compensated when I finally got to my VCAT hearing. On the 16th of the 10th, 2017, I picked up my daughter from school, and when we started to walk home, we saw the respondent standing in the middle of the footpath staring at us. The respondent had this way of staring at me with his hand on his hip, like he was asking me why I had the audacity to walk towards the block of units that I lived in. He was so arrogant and so hateful towards me, and his attitude was so demeaning that he made me feel like I needed to explain why I wanted access to my own home. Anyway, when I saw him standing there, I knew I couldn't get access to the block, so I turned around and ran in the opposite direction. And we ran until we felt safe, and then we turned around and we saw that he was still staring at us. So we turned around again and ran even farther. Then I noticed that the respondent was driving towards us in his work van, so I tried to run even faster, but the respondent drove past, then stopped his van and looked at me in his rear vision mirror. I don't know why he was looking at me or what he was expecting, but we ran down another street and hid behind a car until I saw him drive off and it was safe to walk home. I was able to get into my home safely, but later that night there was the usual banging on the ceiling and I couldn't sleep and it gave me a headache. And I don't know if that was from the stress or from all the noise. Then on the 17th of the 10th, 2017, we went straight to the laundrette after I got my daughter from school. And that was okay because they have free Wi-Fi and a TV. And we just sat there and then we got home at around 5:30 p.m., which was okay because I had avoided the respondent and that was the main thing. I would have loved to go on to a hotel just so I could get a good night's sleep. But as I keep saying, I just couldn't afford it. And I had to pay so much money in postage and administrative costs, I couldn't save up the money if I tried. On the 18th and 19th of the 10th, 2017, I was still going out after getting my daughter from school. But then on the 20th of the 10th, 2017, we went to the park. And when we got home, there was a removal truck in the car park of the block. I didn't know who was moving, but I was hopeful that it was the respondent. But I couldn't imagine that because if I thought about it and he didn't move out, the pain of the disappointment would have been too much.